We'll start, I guess, with the basics. Just kind of the 30,000-foot view. Tell me about the bill. What's it set out to achieve, and how does it attempt to do that?
Yeah, last week I introduced the Protect Act alongside a bipartisan group of lawmakers to identify bad actors that are putting PFAS into our air and to close some of the loopholes, particularly around reclassification. Here in Michigan, we obviously know the PFAS story very well. Uh, I've been pleased to act in the past to address PFAS in our water, but we also need to make sure that it's not getting into our air, which has been overlooked, and there are loopholes that now need to get closed. So this is going to be good for Michigan's health and for our safety, and just ensure that we have some of the best standards in the world. And I'm so pleased to see this legislation be bipartisan and to take the step to stand up for the health and safety of Michiganders.
We'll come back to the remediation piece of that in a second. Thank you for that. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Obviously it's a growing issue. If you could shed some light on the increasing prevalence of PFAS compounds in various surveys, and just gauge your level of concern with what's out there and what we're doing about it.
Yeah, PFAS is something I'm hearing about all over Michigan. Earlier this year, I was in West Michigan, and this topic came up. And we know that we need good partnership. We know we need federal standards, and we don't need loopholes. We need ways to identify the bad actors to stop this before it starts and to identify when it has happened so that we can begin a cleanup process. And so we've been alarmed by having some of the biggest outbreaks of PFAS in the country here in Michigan. And we want not only our water to be safe, but we also want our air to not be poisoned by chemicals.
Doesn't sound bad to me. What specifically sets this effort apart from other, previous efforts, extant efforts that seek to impose more controls on this stuff?
Yeah, there's just an opening here for us to address something that has been overlooked, and that's PFAS in our airways. And if we classify PFAS accordingly within the Environmental Protection Agency, and we've got ways to identify and hold bad actors accountable and work on the cleanup, that's going to keep us safe. We've taken several steps in the Congress that I've been very pleased to be a part of. There's actually a bipartisan PFAS working group, particularly along the lines of water and remediation and cleanup. But now it's time to act on air and ensure that consumers have and residents have the information that they need, and that we can just be safe and that we can have public health safety components in place alongside our Environmental Protection Agency.
How or would, I guess, the bill relate to some of those remediation efforts we discussed earlier, currently underway in places like, Cadillac, Wordsmith, the Wolverine Worldwide site, where we're dealing with industrial pollutants and contaminated groundwater?
Yeah, we are very familiar with the dizzying impact of having to clean up PFAS in our water. And by identifying the bad actors and the pollutants that take place in our airways, there will be a force mechanism for cleanup and addressing that. And there's also got to be innovative solutions as well to prevent this from happening, as well as to identify ways in which we can rapidly clean up. And so when we see this in our air, it's not just knowledge is power, but it's also the accountability to ensure that we're cleaning up as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for
And
that.
that those bad actors are doing the cleanup.
Sure, absolutely. Which I know is a long-running effort by the federal government. How would you rate the federal government's partnership thus far with some of the remediation efforts that are currently underway or were executed previously? And just one more question after that for you.
Yeah, there's been some starts and stops. Sometimes it feels like we're making a lot of strides and it's all hands on deck. And other times it feels like the attention is off the ball and we're left holding the bag. We know in Michigan, with just some of our incredible natural resources and assets, that we're going to rely on federal partnership, that we need the talent, the workforce, the resources. And I want to continue to see us have those resources and have the standard settings put into place. So I'm really hopeful that this bipartisan legislation can rapidly make it through the House of Representatives. I've been recognized as the most effective Democratic lawmaker in the chamber on science and technology issues. This is right in a wheelhouse that I've pursued along the lines of public health and safety. I've also introduced legislation on plastic health and cleaning up plastic in our environment. I've also introduced legislation on thyroid research. And again, health and safety and the investment in knowledge and public-private partnerships is the best way to go forward. And so when we're putting the emphasis on the problem and the opportunity at hand, I believe we're succeeding.
Okay, and once under the assumption of passage eventually, once the ball is out of Congress's court, I mean, do you see the EPA being able to implement this? Do you see any barriers to its ultimate implementation, especially given some changes underway over at the EPA and with regard to the rulemaking process?
Yeah, congressional oversight certainly begs a lot of questions around the functionality of these federal agencies. We're getting reports about some of the massive firings that took place under DOGE as impacting health and safety. And this is why, right now, as we're in our congressional appropriations season and we're doing the federal budget, we certainly want to see a fully exercised workforce that is following the letter of the law and meeting the charge here.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And one final question. President Trump is visiting Michigan today. Any kind of a response to some of the rhetoric that's out there, anything we might hear today?
We need the voice of small businesses and our workers to be heard in Michigan. So much of the policy making that we see taking place sometimes it ignores those voices. They are being impacted by these policy decisions. We will get better results if we are actually listening to the entrepreneurs and the innovators and the hardworking people of our state each and every single day, who are certainly feeling the squeeze of rising costs and are so proud to be here in Michigan, but need champions at the policy-making table, which is something that I obviously work to achieve every single day.
Right.
Thanks
Well,
so
thank
much,
you.
Charlie. We
Yeah,
gotta jump to our next thing.
of course. Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate you taking the time.